Nora's earliest memories were not filled with laughter or warm embraces, but with silence. Silence that lingered in the corners of rooms where her parents cooed over her younger sister Alina. The moments she earned a certificate in school, came home with a report card filled with A's, or won a debate competition, were met with a nod or a distracted "that's nice, sweetheart." Meanwhile, Alina, who struggled with grades and frequently sought attention, was always in the spotlight. Nora was 5 years older than Alina and had developed a calm, introverted nature early on. She watched and learned the rules of survival in a household where love was measured in attention, and attention was a currency only Alina possessed in abundance. Their mother would often say, "Nora doesn't need praise. She's the strong one." And their father, a respected lawyer, would smile proudly at Alina's ballet recitals while forgetting to even ask about Nora's science fair. But Nora didn't complain. She buried herself in books, studied relentlessly, and worked hard to win scholarships so she wouldn't be a burden to her family. While Alina posted selfies and went to parties, Nora was grinding her way through law school, working part-time jobs, and living in a shared apartment to afford her dreams. Despite the indifference, Nora loved her sister. She protected her in school, helped her with homework, and bailed her out when she got into trouble. But that love, like everything else, was one-sided. Alina treated her like a backup friend, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. Everything began to change when Nora got a job at a top legal firm in the city. She moved into a modest but neat apartment and started rebuilding herself with confidence. Her colleagues respected her, her clients trusted her, and for the first time in her life, she felt seen. It was during this time that she met Horace. He was charming, grounded, and seemed genuinely interested in her. Their bond grew gradually, naturally. He admired her intelligence and quiet strength. For the first time, Nora felt what it was like to be chosen. They dated for nearly 2 years. Horace met her parents, who expressed mild surprise that Nora had managed to find someone. "He's quite handsome," her mother had whispered to her father. Imagine if Alina met someone like that. Nora ignored the jab and focused on the joy she felt. Horace proposed one winter evening in the snow-covered park where they had their first date. She said yes through tears of disbelief. Her family responded with cautious smiles and offered to help with the wedding. Nora hoped this meant they were finally accepting her happiness. For a while, everything seemed to fall into place. Wedding cards were printed, venues booked, and Nora felt like the protagonist of her own life for once. But happiness, in her world, was never meant to last long. It started with small things. Alina asking too many questions about Horace. Her sudden interest in the wedding plans. Nora noticed the way Horace looked uncomfortable when Alina was around, but brushed it off. Her instincts whispered, but she hushed them. She wanted to believe this time was different. Until one evening, a week before the wedding, Nora received a message from an unknown number. "You deserve the truth." Attached was a video. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. There, in high resolution, was Horace and Alina, kissing in the parking lot of a hotel. Nora's world froze. The video was time-stamped just 2 nights ago. She couldn't breathe. Her legs gave out and she collapsed onto her couch, shaking with rage, betrayal, and a sorrow so deep it swallowed her whole. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She sat there, breathing through the storm within her. And then something shifted. Like a switch had been flipped. Nora, who had spent a lifetime being overlooked, discarded, and betrayed, was gone. She stood up, calm as ever, and whispered to herself, "You wanted war, Alina. I'll give you one." The morning after the wedding was unnaturally quiet. Audrey sat by the window of her Somerville condo, watching the overcast sky mirror her mood. The champagne flute in her hand from last night's reception still held a trace of the expensive vintage, now flat and bitter. She hadn't slept. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melissa, her cousin. "Are you okay? What you said last night, it was intense. I'm proud of you." Finally. Melissa's words brought a fragile smile to Audrey's lips. Last night had been more than intense, it had been the rupture of years of buried humiliation. Her mother's toast, cold and calculating, had finally broken her. But it wasn't just about a wedding toast. Audrey had something more now, proof. Proof of Rachel's embezzlement. Proof of her affair with Jason's best man. And most importantly, a deep-rooted will to reclaim her identity and dignity. That afternoon, Audrey contacted a trusted friend from Northeastern, Liam. A cybersecurity expert, Liam had a quiet, investigative mind and an unshakable sense of justice. "I need help analyzing some data," she told him when they met at a quiet Cambridge cafe. She showed him the screenshots and photos. Rachel's financial betrayals were no longer just paper trails, they were digital footprints leading straight to her downfall. "Audrey," Liam said, brows furrowed, "this isn't just bad. It's criminal. And if this affects your father's firm, the entire business could collapse." Audrey nodded. It's time someone knew who Rachel really is. The next few days were a whirlwind of quiet planning. Audrey began organizing the evidence, consulting a lawyer discreetly, and preparing a digital portfolio of Rachel's theft and infidelity. But revenge wasn't her only goal. Audrey wanted the truth to finally come out. Not just to punish Rachel but to liberate herself. Her opportunity came faster than she expected. Jason's mother, Elizabeth Blackwell, sent her a formal invite to a post-wedding brunch. The invite was clearly an olive branch. Elizabeth had always sensed the off-kilter dynamics between Audrey and her family. Now, she wanted to talk. "Come alone," the message read. "There are things we need to discuss." At the brunch, Elizabeth was dressed in a sleek navy suit, a stark contrast to the informal tone of the event. They sat in the rose garden behind the Blackwell estate, sipping black coffee. "I admired your composure at the wedding," Elizabeth began. "You looked aware. As if you knew more than you said." Audrey didn't deny it. "I know everything," she said simply. She pulled out a USB drive and placed it on the wrought iron table. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. "You're not bluffing, are you?" "Not even close. Rachel has been stealing from our father's firm. And she's been cheating on Jason." Elizabeth's face remained unreadable. "Why are you telling me?" Audrey smiled. "Because Jason deserves the truth. And because your family is about to invest millions into merging with my father's firm. You need to know who you're partnering with." The older woman took the USB drive, finally showing a flicker of interest and concern. "You're brave. And dangerous." "No," Audrey said softly. "I'm just done being invisible." That evening, Jason arrived at Audrey's apartment. His eyes were red, jaw clenched. He didn't ask how she knew. "Thank you," he said. And then, with trembling hands, he handed her a folder. "Rachel served me divorce papers this morning. Claimed incompatibility. After one night of marriage." Audrey stared at the man who had almost become her brother-in-law. "She knew I found out about Marcus," he whispered. "But I didn't react. I wanted to see what she'd do." "And what will you do now?" Jason straightened. "Expose her. Help me take her down. Not just for me, but for your father. For everyone she's hurt." Audrey nodded. It was time. Together, they began to execute the plan. They compiled everything: the financial fraud, the affair, and her manipulation of the family business. Jason, as a major investor and public figure, would go public first, with legal protection. Audrey reached out to journalists she trusted from Boston's business scene. She didn't name herself in the story, but she was the invisible hand guiding the fire. In the final days before the expose dropped, Rachel called her. For the first time in months. "You think you've won?" Rachel hissed. "No," Audrey said. "But I've stopped losing." The line went dead. But Audrey's voice still echoed. Audrey Walker stood at the edge of the ballroom floor, her heart pounding like war drums in her chest. The crowd clinked glasses and raised toasts, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering inside her. She held her phone tightly, her thumb hovering over the send button. One press, and the screenshots of Rachel's betrayal would be delivered to every major investor in Blackwell Properties, to Jason, and worst of all, to their father. But she hesitated. Not because she doubted her decision, but because she knew what it would cost. Family, reputation, peace. All gone. She thought of her childhood again, the missed birthdays, the ignored achievements, the name misspelled on a cheap grocery store cake. And now, here she was again, reduced to a decorative piece at a wedding where she should have been a centerpiece. "Enough," she whispered. Audrey stepped away from the dance floor and slipped out through a side door. The hallway was quiet and dimly lit. She dialed a number she had memorized months ago but never dared to call. "Detective Sullivan? I have information related to financial fraud. It involves my sister, Rachel Walker, and Blackwell Properties." There was a pause. "Go on," the gruff voice replied. By the time Audrey returned to the ballroom, her pulse had steadied, but her resolve had sharpened into steel. She rejoined table 19 and quietly observed. Jason, still beaming from the speeches, leaned close to whisper something into Rachel's ear. Rachel giggled and kissed his cheek, as if she weren't planning to meet Marcus in room 718 that night. Audrey leaned over to Gregory Blackwell, Jason's father, who had wandered by to check on the distant guests. "Mr. Blackwell, could I have a private word with you?" "It's about something urgent." His smile faded at her tone. "Of course." They moved to a quieter alcove. Audrey didn't sugarcoat anything. She showed him the screenshots, the bank transfers, the text messages. She laid bare the truth. "You have to do something," she said. "Not just for Jason, but for your entire company." Gregory's face turned pale as he scrolled through the evidence. "If this is true, everything we've built could be at risk." "It is true. And I have more. I gave the Boston PD a copy tonight." Gregory looked at Audrey, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. An hour later, just before the cake-cutting ceremony, the mood in the ballroom shifted. Jason was summoned quietly to the hallway. Then Rachel. Gregory was nowhere to be seen. And then, whispers began to ripple through the guests. The wedding coordinator stepped up to the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, due to unforeseen circumstances, there will be a delay in the festivities. Please enjoy the dessert and champagne. Rachel returned, her face pale and her composure cracking. Audrey saw her glance around the room, eyes wide with panic, scanning for Marcus or Jason. Neither was in sight. Then came the real blow. Detectives in formal suits arrived at the venue. Quietly, professionally. Rachel was approached in front of everyone. "Miss Walker, we need you to come with us. You're not under arrest, yet. But we need to question you regarding allegations of financial misconduct." The room fell into stunned silence. Audrey watched as her sister, always the star, always the favorite, was escorted out of her own wedding. Outside, Jason waited beside a black town car, his expression unreadable. Audrey stepped forward, expecting anger. Instead, he nodded. "You did what needed to be done. I found the messages too. Marcus confessed everything. She betrayed us both." Audrey exhaled, a weight lifting. Jason extended a hand. "I'm sorry for how your family treated you. If it means anything, I saw you today. Really saw you." They shook hands. The aftermath was explosive. News broke about the embezzlement scandal. Rachel's face was splashed across headlines. Gregory Blackwell made a public statement distancing the company from the scandal and thanking a brave whistleblower for coming forward. Audrey's parents called her, finally. Not to yell. Not to scold. But to ask her side of the story. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" her mother asked, voice trembling. Audrey paused. "Would you have believed me?" Weeks passed. Audrey kept her job. Her condo. Her peace. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the invisible one. She had shattered the narrative, rewritten her role. And Rachel? She was under investigation. Her wedding was annulled. Her name, once synonymous with perfection, now trailed scandal. But Audrey didn't rejoice in the downfall. She simply lived. For herself. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. As the ballroom lights shimmered across golden cutlery and crystal glasses, Audrey rose from her seat at the dimly lit table 19. Her heart pounded in her chest, not with fear, but resolve. For the first time in her life, she was about to become the main character of her own story. The master of ceremonies had just handed the microphone to Audrey's mother, Diana, who stood radiant with a flute of champagne in hand. Her voice floated above the hushed crowd. "To Rachel, the daughter who truly deserves everything." A few people clapped politely. Audrey's father beamed at Rachel, oblivious to what was about to unfold. The words settled in the air like dust in sunlight, and something inside Audrey surged. She stood. "I'd like to say a few words." The microphone was reluctantly passed to her. Whispers fluttered through the room. Rachel narrowed her eyes. Audrey, the forgotten sister, held her ground at the center of the grand ballroom. You'll remember this day, just not for the reason you think. Gasps and murmurs followed. Rachel stiffened in her seat. Audrey took a deep breath. For 29 years, I have been a ghost in my own family. Invisible. Forgotten. Overshadowed. But today, I'd like to shine a little light on the truth, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been dismissed. She lifted her phone and tapped the screen. The projector, previously displaying a looping slideshow of Rachel and Jason's engagement photos, now glowed with something else. Screenshots. First, a series of bank statements and account transfers. Offshore accounts. Thousands of dollars moved quietly from her father's company. Then came the messages. Marcus B. Reed, can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful. Room 718. Audrey spoke calmly, like a woman who had carried this weight too long. Rachel didn't just forget to include her only sister in her wedding. She stole from our father's firm. She's planning to meet her ex-boyfriend tonight, yes, tonight, after this perfect wedding. Jason stood, confused. His best man, Marcus, turned white as a sheet. Diana tried to grab the mic back. Audrey stepped aside. You've always said Rachel deserved everything, Audrey said to her mother. I suppose you'll be proud of how thoroughly she took it. Security came. Chaos erupted. Jason demanded to see Rachel's phone. Diana tried to deny everything, but the guests had already taken their phones out. Evidence was everywhere now. Audrey slipped out before the shouting escalated. She didn't need to watch the fallout. Her truth had been heard. 3 months later. Audrey sipped coffee at a quiet seaside cafe. She'd left Boston the week after the wedding, sold her condo, and accepted a remote creative director job with a San Francisco firm. Peace felt strange, but good. A headline scrolled across her tablet. Blackwell wedding scandal, Rachel under investigation for corporate theft. Rachel's picture showed her in a trench coat, avoiding cameras. Jason had called off the marriage. Her parents, facing financial audits, had stopped contacting Audrey altogether. Audrey didn't need their approval anymore. As she finished her coffee, a woman at the next table smiled. I saw your video. Brave of you. Audrey nodded. For once, she didn't feel invisible. She stood, looked out at the ocean, and let the waves wash over her silence. The past was behind her. This wasn't revenge. It was freedom.